Hello my friends and welcome. We have some of the interesting news coming from the front lines. For example, Ukraine finishes off the Russian group which was previously trapped in Kupiansk. And that is kind of strange because Russians actually have lots of the places where they potentially could hide. Like for example ruined buildings, basements and so on. But Ukraine just grinds down the Russian infantry completely, and according to my information, there are just few of the Russian soldiers remain. And our officers reported that it is happening way faster, even compared to the previous Russian encirclements in the Brapilya direction. Then there was the failed Russian offensive maneuver. After it, Ukraine spent almost 3 months clearing Russian positions, where here we are speaking about maximum 3 weeks, then Ukraine finishes this job. Well, I have some of the GoPro video showing our guys clearing Kupiansk building after building, and here they managed to capture even some of the Russian soldiers. Like for example, this Russian soldier who stayed there for a very long time finally surrendered and was imprisoned. That's the place where he spent several weeks of his miserable life before being discovered by Ukrainian storm group. The place was geolocated, that's the central part of Kupiansk. Still some of the buildings are under the Russian control, or there's just the presence of the Russian army, and they lost communication with the Russian command. I know it because I monitor the Russian military channels. And here's the video of the Ukrainian drone. There's the hospital in Kupiansk that is not the hospital any longer, it's just the Russian position that was hit multiple of the times, also with the help of the gliding aviation bombs. Russians started to spread the disinformation that there is a presence of Ukrainian army and it was the friendly fire on the own forces, but it is just hoax. And many of the Russian military bloggers who have the real picture of what is happening in Kupiansk, they disapprove the Russian official propaganda, saying that it's complete hoax and dancing on the bones of our dead soldiers. That's how they say. So definitely it's the Ukrainian strike on the Russian positions. That's what they say, hohols, so that's how they call Ukrainians, definitely hit our last dugout in Kupiansk. Also, Russians tried to send some of the reinforcements closer to Kupiansk using the pipeline. Partially it was destroyed, but they want to get as close as possible, not being spotted, but they were spotted, as you might see on this image. Ukraine used artillery fire and several of the FPV drones to really hit Russian positions. We have this video. I cannot play it, sorry guys, for YouTube. It's not possible, but I'm gonna share the link to my Telegram channel. My Telegram is in a video description just below. Plus today I plan to go live on Kick platform, where I usually review all of those images from the front line. There were several of the waves of the Russian infantry, totally 40 of the army personnel were liquidated by Ukrainian strikes, Ukrainian defenders. Fantastic job. It also tells that Russia has this political will to return Kupiansk under control, because there are some of the small attack attempts. And now Russians try to perform, I would say, this desperate attack attempt towards Kurilivka, advancing on their armored vehicles, but they were spotted on the way. This gray zone doesn't mean the huge Russian army advancement, no, just this one. A vehicle full of the Russian infantry that was spotted and finished off with the help of the drone drops and so on. Some of the Russian soldiers from that vehicle reached the nearby households and later on were flatlined as well. The situation for the Russian soldiers on the front lines is not looking well. They advance mostly with the help of those all-terrain vehicles, small cars, but they stick to the roads because it's impossible to go off-road on the wheeled transport. So Ukraine knows where to search for those mobile Russian assaults in Pokrovsk, in Kupiansk, in Mirnograd, elsewhere. Yeah, this used to be a Niva vehicle. It has the spare wheel under the hood. Yes, it's the construction, normal one for Niva, and there is the electronic warfare that doesn't help. Also, there are reports that Russians are using more and more of the mercenaries from Africa, from Asian countries who voluntarily go to the Russian army. Well, usually they end up in those photo sessions organized by Ukrainian drone cameramen. And here's the job of the Ukrainian 105th Brigade of the Territorial Defense. It seems like it is a Zaporizhia direction because that brigade operates in Zaporizhia. In the comments, it is mentioned that it happened 20 kilometers away from the front lines. Russians were gathered before advancing to the front lines. And you see, this is the electronic Waffe on top of those vehicles. It didn't work. And this image was taken several days ago from Kupiansk, where Russians also attempt to reach Ukrainian positions even on those motorcycles. If the weather is more or less okay, they also go on those enduro bikes, not just all-terrain vehicles. In Pokrovsk direction, Rodinsk, Russia goes on PR attacks, advancing with maximum 2 of the soldiers who show Russian flags, and later on they are being flat-lined. Here they are waving the flag, everything is great, they're controlling position, but later on Ukrainian army comes and gets rid of the Russian occupiers. It is Rodinsk, which is crucial for Ukrainian defense of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd. Still, there is the presence of Ukrainian army in both of those settlements. Yeah, just to show you, this is Rodinsk, where Ukrainian flag was spotted. What I see here about the changes, light expansion of the gray zone, that's it. From what I see, the intensity of the fights in Pokrovsk and Mirnograd dropped down significantly for the last week. Is it the cold weather that is the factor? Maybe. And the forecast for even colder weather down to minus 16 degrees centigrade. And just imagine the Russian soldier who is in lack of the supplies. Russian command demands him to attack Ukrainian positions, advancing on every sort of the vehicle possible, all-terrain one, or motorcycle, or a horse. It really demotivates Russian soldiers. That's why the intensity of attacks dropped down significantly. Alright, we have some fresh video from Pokrovsk outskirts. Russians were trying to go with all-terrain vehicles. Some of the MRAP is there. It looks like maybe even Tiger and UAZ vehicle from what I see. Russians stopped for whatever reason, and later on they were annihilated because the stationary target is a good prey for Ukrainian HIMARS in this case. Yeah, it was HIMARS, kaboom, bada boom, and the convoy is gone completely. You know, there are some small particles in the HIMARS shell that penetrate absolutely everything. In Konstantinivka, I see the expansion of the red zone. It's so-called Russian territory, so-called because Ukraine is still capable to strike Russia here behind the front lines, and we see it in this area. So even in Toretsk, Russia has losses of the vehicles, and it's quite far away from Konstantinivka. As you see, Russians are also using drones to hit Ukrainian vehicles. Yeah, it's the war, it happens. Both of the sides are using drones, but Ukraine uses those more effectively, especially than Russians. They form some of the convoys. Let's check out, for example, this one. There are lots of the things to check, so we have geolocation confirmation from all around the front lines. Yeah, those Russian soldiers, this one is really at this some sort of the wheelchair with automatic control system, or how to call it. I wonder where did he go, this sophisticated piece of equipment. And all of those Russian soldiers, they have some of the diagnosis, and Russia fails to decommission them. They're still deployed in Ukraine, and those soldiers, they complain that they are not being sent back to Russia for medical treatment. They are said to operate, to continue the mission. The guy really on a wheelchair. Yeah, the arm, something definitely wrong with his arm. He says it's not moving, it's not working. Nevertheless, Russian army keeps them for whatever reason. Maybe it's gonna be one more evolution after donkeys and horses, then Russian soldiers will advance on wheelchairs. That's the video from another Russian base, and just look at this Russian soldier before he obtained the wounds, but he was sent back to fight. This is not a volunteer. He has no leg. He tried to be a decommissioned, and Russian army sent him back. They say he will be a machine gunner, stormtrooper machine gunner, without a leg. Well, here we have the interesting statistics about the Russian vehicle losses. We see that in 2025, in general, Russia lost less of the vehicles compared to 2022, 2023, and 2024. But why is it happening like that? Because Russians are changing for more mobile transport, like motorcycles, all-terrain vehicles, Ladas, and Bukhanka vans. Yeah, of course, not all of the losses were calculated in these statistics. It's just the confirmed visual information we have. But this year, Russia has more infantry losses than ever before, despite them losing less of the armored vehicles, MRAPs, and so on. In the red, you may see 2025, November, December, usually intensity of the fights dropped down. Plus, Russia lost the vast resources of its artillery, tanks, which were stored in the Russian ammunition warehouses for a very long time, since the Soviet Union, and those vehicles supposed to fight against the NATO army, not against the Ukrainian one. Well, Russia just grinds down their own army in Ukraine, as we see. So on the front lines for the last couple of days, guys, there are just minor changes, small advancements here and there of the Russian army mostly, but also there is the Ukrainian success, for example, in Kupiansk. I haven't seen those huge convoy attacks for the last week or two, but they will happen. Believe me, Russia will use the same strategy again and again. Probably now they wait for the better weather to go with those convoys. And what doesn't change are the Ukrainian strikes on the Russian military and industrial infrastructure. For example, here's the picture from this night. I am recording this video early morning, so we already have the confirmation about what particular Ukraine hit this night. And by the way, Moscow airports have been closed for the third day consecutive. Yeah, they closed for several hours, but it's enough to cause the complete chaos in the flight schedule. So here we go, that's the Lipetsk Oblast, the oil reservoir is on fire. One more picture from another site of the same facility. Yeletska Oblast, some industrial facility Energia is on fire. This warehouse was producing some military components. It was completely annihilated. At least the part of the building is gone. It looks like something flammable was inside. Some kabooms were reported in Penza. It looks like it's the bearing factory. Well, it was reported like that. Bearings are important for military production too. Kamsarskaya Oblast, kaboom on territory of the local ammunition warehouse. What is burning there is the 100s Grau arsenal. It's very big and has lots of ammunition. It will also slow down the Russian offensive actions in Ukraine. Just briefly want to touch the news about Ukrainian management, politics and military. Ukrainian SBU chief Maluk resigned from his position under the influence of Zelensky personally. Yes, after the meeting with Zelensky, Maluk was replaced by this guy. His name is Evgen Hamara. He is the commander of the Alpha Special Forces, also the part of SBU, and he was involved in planning of the most of the operations conducted by SBU, so more or less this change is for the competent leader too. Maluk was successful and Khmara as well. Yes, Zelensky recently conducted lots of the changes, including appointing Budanov as the head of the president's office. Well, most of the changes, I think they're for good. And I also expect that this year Syrsky will resign. Why do I give the high probability for Syrsky to resign this year? Because the newly appointed defense minister Fedorov has different approach on everything. Fedorov is all about technologies, about innovations, and Syrsky is about old Soviet school. They simply cannot work together. It's my opinion. I could be wrong, I just think like that those two guys, they are completely different. And since Fedorov is the chief, I think Syrsky will be not dismissed, but he will be told to resign. Maybe it might happen even this winter, and it's gonna be a positive step for Ukrainian army. Again, my opinion. Well, not just mine, but lots of the volunteers, officers, soldiers, they're waiting for this step. To the other news, that's the epic video of the Finnish Coast Guard. They show how they land on the Russian-affiliated ship, where the crew was partially Russian, and this vessel was involved in damaging the underwater cable between Finland and Estonia, from what I understood. So the special forces, they land on board of the ship and they detained crew members. Allegedly, 3 of the crew members were involved directly. They're being arrested without ability to leave Finland, and investigation is ongoing. The vessel was found with the anchor down, so they use anchors to damage the underwater cables. And here, this specific spot, you see, this anchor is down. They try to retract it up. Yeah, in this compilation, it is visible. The chain is down, and they did it for purpose. So 100% the captain of the ship is involved in that wrongdoing. It's not an accident, because multiple of those, how to call those, provocations or attacks on underwater cables were happening before. And finally, I see some of the prompt action coming from Finnish authorities, from Europeans. Fantastic! And guys, thank you so much for making my job possible with your kind support on Patreon. The link for it you may find in the video description just below. If you watch me on YouTube, you may also follow the membership of the channel by pressing the button join. Thank you so much for motivating me to film more of the videos. Maybe today I'm gonna come out with more updates of the world politics or update from Ukraine, we'll see. Also, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for the channel, because that is how you boost this video in algorithms. Thank you so much for it. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.